Hello everyone, welcome to this Blender tutorial. Today I want to show you how to create this shockwave effect for a futuristic weapon, and this tutorial is inspired by a video copilot tutorial that has been released recently. It uses a slightly different approach, but I think the result still looks okay. Okay, let's head into Blender. I have already prepared a scene with the camera aligned along the y-axis and the video file loaded as a background image for the camera view, and I'm going to work in the Blender internal render engine. As you can see, this is our source footage. And first of all, I'm going to add a circle. As you can see, it's right here. I rotate it along the x-axis by 90 degrees. And now we have it right here. Tap into edit mode. With everything selected, I press E to extrude. Escape because I don't want to move it, but I want to scale it down. And this way we will have this sort of ring created. And this ring will basically form our shockwave that gets bigger once the character fires. Let's find the frame where he starts shooting, and here he begins to pull back the weapon for the recoil, so I will use frame 41. I align the shockwave with the muzzle of the gun, and first of all I will scale it down like so. I to insert a scaling keyframe, and then let's see, a couple of frames forward, I scale it up, insert a scaling keyframe, and just to get a better idea of how this shockwave will look, I scale it down one frame after the biggest one, so we will get this is how the shockwave from timing wise will look like. And I guess it could be a little slower, so I change to dope sheet view and select the last two keyframes and move them back by 2 frames. Let's see how the timing looks now. 3D view, a bit slower. Two frames might have been one too much. 1 frame. Yes, this looks about right from the timing. Of course, we only want this cylinder to be visible when he actually shoots. We could do this several ways. We could use the alpha of the material, but just a quick and dirty way, simply add a location keyframe and another one on the last frame you want it visible, and 1 frame before we want to have the shockwave, simply move it out of the visible area. this way. Now, what do we do with the material? Add a new material, and I will call this shock. And shadeless, by the way, I can do it right now. I want to have a black background as a sky because I will use the I will use screen later, the screen node later on, and screen or add will make black disappear, and everything that is not black will be superimposed above the video. Shadeless, simple shadeless material, and I want a cloud texture. Color ramp, and it should also affect the alpha. And for that I will have to activate transparency, and the transparency of the material should be turned completely to 0 because the texture will override this anyway. And we can play around a bit with the size of it. 0.3 depth to give it a bit more detail. Maybe hard or no, soft looks okay. And I quite like this one. Voronoi F1. F1, sorry, that was... Okay, let's see how this will look like rendered. And it's not much transparent, so I will and maybe B-spline to have B-spline gives a far easier transition from white to black, and that looks okay. Just one more thing, because the angle in which he holds the gun is slightly, well, not directly towards the camera but slightly offset, so rotate around the Z-axis and adjust the ring to be at a bit of an angle. That might even have been a bit much. And okay, let's find a frame where we have a lot of this material visible, and press F1 and change to the node editor. We want to use the compositing nodes, and I want to use a backdrop. This is what our material right now looks like. And let's input the movie clip, select it here. Always make sure to scale it to the actual render size. And now with screen, where is it? Screen. Doesn't look very impressive right now, but we will work on this. First of all, color. I want this to be brighter, so it will be more visible when we screen it, and no, I want to reduce the red, so it will turn increase the blue and the green, so we will have this kind of teal color. And also I will give it a glow quality. Let's say 1% and 1% in that direction, and correct wire. And maybe for the larger one, bit much, 7%. And now if we duplicate the screen node, and one more duplicate, we have this kind of glowing effect, but still the edge of our Shockwave is very, very sharp, and that's not what I want. And to correct this, I will switch back to 3D view. With our ring selected in the object settings right here, I will make sure the path index is 1, and I will make sure that our render layer will actually use the have an object index output. One more render to get it to show up. And now what can we do with this object index? Converter ID mask, we have set the index to 1, and now what we get is a nice mask of this ring. I want to have it a bit distort. Where is it? Filter, dilate, erode. Feather it much smaller. Let's say 35. And then I will copy this blur node. Just not as extreme, maybe 3. And now, so we use the ID node to get this, dilate it, and then blurred to get a softer edge. And now if we mix and multiply, what we will get, hopefully, right now the edge is a bit sharp. Let me set it to step. So using feather in the dilate erode node didn't work really very well, but with step we get a bit of a finer result, and we blurred anyway, so feather is not really necessary. As you can see, by doing this we get a smoother edge that slowly fades out, and this looks much nicer in my opinion than just the harsh edge that we had before. So much for this. I think we can check this out in the video compositor at our scene and deactivate OpenGL preview to get a complete. Before I do this, let me check one thing. Yes, I actually have the composite node, that is the final output, connected to our last screen, so it should work. And now, if we play this through, it won't really run at real time, but still we will be able to get an idea of how the effect will look like. This already looks okay, but there's one more thing we can improve. Right now the structure is the same on every single frame, and I mean the noise structure. And if we go back to default 3D view and the material right here, if we, where is it, clouds, no, mapping, unfortunately this doesn't show up in the preview, but if we change from the first frame, we insert with hovering over this and pressing I a keyframe for the offset, and the last frame where it's visible, let's say put it to maybe 4, right click, insert keyframes, and now going back to the video editor, refresh sequencer and play it. If I go through the structure of this noise, or these waveforms, will change from frame to frame a little bit. And I can see one little problem, because our dilate is really aggressive. When the ring is very small, it completely disappears. That's not what I want, so I will have to insert some keyframes for that. It looked okay right here. Let me go back. So it looks okay on frame 45. So I will use a keyframe dilate a keyframe to that, but on the first frame only 5, and refresh our sequencer, see what it looks like. And this way the shockwave should be visible from the first frame, from when it's just a small ring to when it gets bigger. Okay, so maybe I will have to put this completely to 0. So there's no making the, let's see, now we see a small ring. And what does this look like on the second? Unfortunately, it completely disappears already. Okay, so having it on this frame and set to 4, let's see what effect this has in the sequencer. So the small ring is slightly visible. Okay. Now, how can we improve this even further? We already have this kind of mask right here. And to make it better, we will use displacement. Input our texture we have right here. Because I want to use this as displacement, having a bit more contrast will make more drastic results in the displacement. And because I only want it where the ring shows up, or about there, using multiply and this, but then again we have the problem that the edge is very sharp, so we copy this blur node, and now when we use this as a input for distort, displace, we use this as the vector. And where do we have our video file? Just to show you how the video will look like. Let's say maybe 20 frames and 20 frames here. Maybe 30 to have it more. Now we can see where this ring would be. It will get displaced, but of course we want this to happen after the bluish effect has already been added. And now we see here those lines, they should be straight, but where the shockwave shows up, they get distorted, like the shockwave would cause some swirl in the air because of the heat. But we also see at the edge of the image where there is no image left and it tries to pull pixels up, it gets all strange and black. To fix this, we can use the alpha over node and pass the original image again. This will copy what we have seen here without the distortion at all the black places where the distortion takes place. I just have to switch them over. So we have the distortion here, but those black areas get their input from the original image to fix these black lines. Okay, let's have a look at this in the video sequence editor. Distortion really takes a while to compute, so this might really take a moment. Now let me see what this looks like. Well, the distortion, it's subtle. And I have forgotten to combine this, obviously, with the composite node. That's why we don't see the distortion at all. Well, can happen. If we go to this frame by frame, we see where the shockwave shows up, straight lines get distorted, and gives a nice little extra effect. Let me limit this. Ah, what the hell? So what is still missing is basically when the shockwave shows up, it would be nice to also have a bluish muzzle flare coming out of the weapon, but I have already made a tutorial on how to create muzzle flares, and you can check that out, and just instead of using orange as a color, making them blue, and you should get a very similar effect to what I've shown you in the beginning. Let me just have one final look at this when the preview has completed, hopefully soon. And as I said in the beginning, it is a slightly different approach from what Andrew Kramer does on the Video Copilot tutorial. And his way honestly looks better, but I think this still is usable. Ah, there we see it. We get a distortion when the shockwave comes along. And I think this still looks quite nice. I hope you learned something. See you next time, and happy blending.